For this project, we're going to be using a water-based paint. So here in class, we're going to be using tempera cakes. At home, if you don't have tempera cakes, obviously you can go ahead and use a watercolor kit at home. Or if you don't have those, you can use any type of paint at home. If you don't have paint, obviously you feel free to use markers, crayons, or colored pencils, but here in school we will be using our tempera watercolor cakes. Tempera watercolor paints work a lot like watercolor paints in that we need to have a container of water, and we need to get our brush wet to get the paint wet for it to work. Last time we did a painting, our paintings were just a few colors and we were color mixing. We weren't really worried about creating a whole picture. There was no subject and background. We were just painting a subject, our pumpkins. So we weren't too concerned about the order of colors that we were using, as they were all different. For this, because we have an object and a background, we're going to be using many different colors. One of the things here in class that we start learning about is coloring with our lightest color first, whether it's with pastels or whether it's painting with paints. So with the paints that I have the primary and secondary colors. Our warm colors are always going to be our lightest colors, starting with yellow and then going to orange and red. After you've used those colors, you can go on to the colder colors. And from lightest to darkest, we would go purple, green, and then blue. So those are the orders that I'd like to see people painting in today. And the reason why we do this is it's going to keep our paper cleaner, our brushes cleaner, so we have to do less paintbrush cleaning. And if we make a mistake with a lighter colored paint, we can always go over that mistake with a darker colored paint. And we'll be talking about that all this year and for the remaining years of elementary. So you know that you have two colors that you're going to be choosing. You need a color for your background and you need a color for your monster. Now, in my practice, I did blue and I did orange. Now, you can open this back up and you can look at all of your monsters, because now it's all about color. We don't need to worry about what the monster looks like. We can just look at the colors and see, do I like that my monster is going to be blue and my background is going to be orange, or do I prefer that my monster is orange and my background be blue, or did I like one of the other color combinations? So even though I picked this picture, that definitely does not mean that I have to use those colors. I could use any of these color combinations. Because blue is one of my favorite colors, I am going to stick with my complementary colors of orange and blue, but I am going to flip it. I like that my monster is a brighter color and my background is a darker color. So for my painting, I'm going to paint my monster orange, and then I'm going to paint my background blue. So I know my two colors. I'm going to be using orange first because it is lighter than blue. In order to get the paint wet, we'll dip our brush in the water and we'll lift. We don't need to worry about wiping the water off because we want our brush to be wet. This next part is called loading the brush, and I like to put a good amount of paint on my brush. Whenever I'm walking around, I'll usually see students just going back and forth once or twice and then trying to paint. And the problem with this is that there's not a lot of paint on there and their color is very faint. By loading the brush, I'll get a lot more color on the brush, which will in turn give me a lot more color on my picture. So in order to load, I'm just going to paint the letter O or a circle or the number 0, and I like to go 10 times. So I'll start here at the top and I'll go around once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now my brush has been loaded up with lots of color, and you're going to notice a big difference when I go to paint. Before I fill in my shape, one of my biggest tips is always go ahead and outline everything first. Go around the outside. It's going to help you stay inside of the lines when you paint. So I'm going to go around the outside of my head. I'm going to go around the outside of my eyes, nose, and mouth. Once you're done outlining, you're going to notice now the outside of your shape or shapes is now much thicker, which means it's going to be way easier to stay inside of the lines when you're painting. So now that everything is outlined and I took my time going around everything, now the inside should go a lot quicker because you don't have to concentrate as much because your lines are much thicker. Please remember, anytime that you need more paint, you'll just dip your brush in. You'll spin the brush about 10 times. If you start noticing that you have a puddle of water on your paints, you no longer need to dip your brush inside of the water because the top of your paint already has lots of water. So you can actually just keep using the water that's on top of your paints. When I paint and I'm filling the inside, I like to pull my brush and lift my brush. Pull my brush, lift my brush. And in class, the kids hear me say all the time, it's like petting a dog or a cat. You start at the head and you pet down towards the tail. We never go back and forth roughly because it could hurt the animal and it could start pulling on the hairs. And that's the same thing that could happen with our brush. If we are treating it like a marker or a crayon, the problem is that our bristles on our brush are going to start fading apart and they're actually going to start falling out. So when we paint here in the classroom, we pull and lift and our brushes will stay nicer and we won't need to replace them as much. Plus our painting is going to have a nicer look to it with all of our brush marks going in the same direction. Once your orange is done, whether it is your monster or your background or whatever your lightest color is, then you can go on to the complementary colors. And our paint kits here at school are set up where the complementaries are across from each other. So we wanted to start on the warm side and work our way to the colder side. The nice part about this is we don't have to spend any time at the sink changing out our brushes or cleaning them with soap and water. You can simply take your brush and you can do gentle circles like you're painting a circle or the number 0 several times on the bottom, just nice and gentle. And that should get a majority of the paint off of your brush. And because we're going to a darker color, the darker color will eventually take over any of the paint remaining in your brush. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our background for those of you that did your lightest colored monster. For those of you who did your background, you will be painting your monster now with your darker color.